I'm back to the OG look. The OG look, boys. It's fucking your boy Sid from Toy Story is back at it again. There is something to be discussed about specifically when it comes to how we measure records, because I got inspired by my previous stream about like how we measure comfortability, about like how which players are just good. Like, in short, I've already said it in the stream title, but I want to talk about specifically this. How do you measure a world record in terms of how good they are? So I already had like a few things pointers to, so I'm just gonna whip it up right here. In short, the first one that's pretty fucking obvious when you really think about it is playtime. So playtime on the map matters a lot, and you could already see it right here. Basically, if you look at the most viewed maps, they're either super iconic maps, or they're like either super iconic maps, you know, like Omnific and shit. All the other maps are like literally just well known. So for example, you got Utopia, Mesa, you have Kitsune 2, Kitsune itself, right? You have all of these other maps, and then you also have like I am so happy that this is like one of the most viewed videos. Like, you don't even know, like this compilation is fucking goated. But pretty much you can already tell that when it comes to world records, they are desired, specifically, at least the most desirable records are on the ones that are the most played. So like the tier 1 maps are the most played maps. But I think there's also something you need to take it into account for, and that is the ease of running, because it actually kind of plays into how competitive a map is also going to be. Running Omnific is way different from running something like Air Control. Where is the nearest Air Control run? Really? Air Control is only... Damn, okay. I'm surprised. Tendies is... Damn, okay. And his morning's run from 10 years ago that's more viewed. Holy fucking shit. That's fucking a big surprise to me. But like these maps, as you could obviously tell, like Surf Akai too is up there, right? Surf Summit, Surf Nix. You can pretty much name all of these like lower tier maps. And essentially, you will have a bunch of fucking people try to go for these maps. Not only because they're easy to run, they are usually short. They're not usually longer than 1 minute. And generally, like, the surf is very easy. However, it is all about execution of it. So you end up having a map that is super easy to run, while also having a map that's really, like, grindable at the same time. It's a lot more about skill. You don't necessarily need to think about some crazy shortcut or anything along those lines. You just need to surf good, which is why these maps also get grinded a lot, if you ask me. If you just need to focus on the gameplay, you don't really need to think about anything else. You don't need to think about setup, you just need to play well, which is why these maps probably end up having the amount of time and playtime they have, because at the end of the day, it's just you. Except for Mesa, I guess, because like the only one, but this one's also kind of like skill based. Like, you have the shortcut right here, right? You have the like 100 tick shortcut being done on 66. Like, obviously this is very hard, but it is mainly, besides the flick, mainly a skill check. It is a skill check because it's just a unit check on 66 tick, right? Not necessarily a hard cut, but it's a hard cut because you not only need to do it well, but you also need a lot of units. So maybe that's like an exception, which actually kind of easily points into the next point. Accessibility and the type of map. I actually feel like if I go into both of these, you can actually just see like how they both like kind of tie into each other. So we talked about like ease of running and accessibility. All of these really do play into each other, but I will explain to you accessibility first. So when you think about it, how easy is it to practice a map like Surf Ambient? How easy do you think it is to save lock a map like Ambient compared to something like, let's just say, fucking Mesa? I think the answer is pretty simple. By far, Ambient is a way harder map to lock. The point, right, being is that overall, compared to something like Mesa, any tier 1, which map do you actually think it's easier to like safe lock and all that shit and get into? I think the answer is pretty fucking easy to for yourself. Ambient is by far the harder map to get into. Not only is it harder, but the route is very hard to practice, and that's the other thing. In terms of record, we're not talking about just like which record is harder here, right? Because that's not the point we're at. We're talking about grinding, sitting down, learning the map, right? Ambient is a way harder map to get into. It is that simple. Compared to Air Control, compared to any other easy map, Ambient is 10 times harder, and not only that, even harder to learn how to run properly, right? So that is what I want to point it with, is accessibility. Another like map you can look at, right? Or types of maps you can look at is otter maps. Otter maps are a perfect example. Especially something like his bonuses, like Remedian bonus 10, fucking Surf Bugs, or anything he's made. They are, most of his stuff is incredibly difficult to save lock. However, I think the moment you're done save locking and the moment you start actually playing, you'll realize just how cohesive and how well designed the map is. But it's hard to get into because not only is it hard, very different, not a lot of people actually start playing it. Blackheart, yep. The point being, accessibility for these maps, definitely not there. Like, it is not as easy to get into these maps. And it leads into the map type, because this ties everything together. So the type of map will definitely also affect all of these, because it depends on the context of the map itself. So unit maps usually will have these two very nailed down. All of these will not be a problem with unit maps, because usually unit surf maps are very simple compared to something like Ambient. Ambient is way more technical, does have a lot of unit requirements in the sense of it's very different. Like, it is very swift surfing and it's very precise and, like, you know, it's pretty simple, right? You're going fast, but you also need to be precise if you were to actually play the map well. Compared to something like, you know, like Perfect Benevolent, right? Benevolent is definitely way more on the side of, like, you can grind this map for a while, right? It has a lot of replayability, you can spend a lot of time, it's easy to run, and it's not necessarily a hard map to start getting into. Those were the things that I wanted to talk about. So now let's bring up paint. Actually talk about why I talked about all of these points, right? And let's compare this in like adjacent to why we rate records. So say we have a map like a fucking, let's say Utopia. Like we just got Utopia right here, right? So we got Utopia right here. So Utopia basically has basically I'll just like do number 1. Basically Utopia literally checks all of these boxes. Like, it checks the first one, checks the second one, checks the third one, and checks the last one. Utopia, because of this, will always be competitive. Like, no matter what, how you twist it, like, Utopia will always end up being a competitive map. Because it's an easy map, it's easy to get into, checks all the boxes we talked about. Now, let's use a map that has an incredible world record. And basically, people underrate it. This is probably the best. This was record of the year, if you ask me. However, it basically checks none of the boxes. This map checks none of the boxes of this. These are the criteria that's going to make a map inherently competitive from the get-go, right? That's that meter. The map I'm talking about is Lodi Preview. So Lodi Preview basically checks none of these boxes. However, the world record on Lodi Preview, if you ask me, will never be beaten. Nobody will beat the record on Lodi Preview. Nobody will. And the thing is, when does the argument come where, because of these things, I feel like this is where it gets super interesting, right? Utopia checks all these boxes. Lodi Preview does not. It does not check any of the boxes. It really does not. It checks none of the boxes. So essentially, right, how a map inherently becomes competitive is basically these. This is the competitive meter. Lodi Preview doesn't check any of these boxes, end up not being competitive, right? When do you have the ability to determine how good a record is? Because it's not competitive, right? I feel like this is where it gets very subjective too. So how do you determine, like, how good is the record? How can you then, like, determine these things? This is where it does become subjective. Because essentially, mention something that's very good, that is played very often, versus something that is very good that it isn't played very often and is not as competitive. That's where it gets really confusing. That's why we really have, like, this discussion of, like, which record is the best, like which one is better, which one isn't, right? Especially when it comes to tech maps versus unit maps, because tech inherently loses this battle because more people are playing unit surf maps. What I want to specifically mention here is that when you really start thinking about the fact that you have competitive maps versus not competitive maps, the same problems occur in both sides, in that as much as people have grinded out the maps, is that we know what's possible. And then we kind of just forget about the fact that when somebody does get close to what we know what's possible, and basically, you know, completely shatters everything. Like, if you fucking look at, like, let's look at the record, like, this world record, right? So how can you determine if this map record is good? Just by looking at it, if you don't know anything about the map. You can do a few things. One, either learn the map, which, I mean, that is definitely fucking gonna be a pain in the ass. This map doesn't really get a lot of playtime because nobody wants to grind this map. Some people don't even consider it surf. Not very accessible, and the map type turns people off. The thing about this map is that it has a bunch of tech that isn't even surf, and it has a bunch of small quirks. Like, some of them being that, depending on which key you press when you enter this, like, teleport, you'll go up faster. To how you want to flick off this ramp to get the most speed out of this anti-grav. This tele-hop too, for what I see. You have to turn around first. Then, this direction. It pushes you, basically, like, in that direction, right? Like, adjacent to the right. So what Louis is doing here is that he's turning the opposite way, and then he presses S and D in the air here and half sideways surfs a bit, and then he lets go of S and then starts turning like D immediately again, so he gets a normal looking board. And then there's also this of when you start like this stage, you immediately jump over and surf the ramp. All of these things, put them into account and you get a record that nobody wants to grind. You can like literally just like look at this shit, look at this top, and then compare this to basically all of the world record checkpoints on the map. There is no tech that he didn't do we didn't know of. There's no tech on the map that he did that nobody didn't know of. Half of the stuff that he's doing is stuff we already knew on the map in his checkpoint record stats. And nobody talks about that. Nobody talks about the fact that he did this. So when you consider this map has been out for fucking years. Years later, this map finally gets a run where pretty much nearly all of the hard tech has been done, not only fast, like the stages have been done fast, all the tech has been executed well, and all the like small techs, all that shit has been executed well, and all the shortcuts that hadn't been done before have been done now, in this run. Geb's time from 2014 is still ranked 10. When you consider this in mind, you have to simply just say, this is at least one of the best records of the year. You can say, oh, nobody wants to do it. How can you not give praise to the player that ends up doing it? This is where I feel like, where it's kind of like a blatant, just not knowledgeable about the game. Guys, let's be real. Pausing the video, do you believe it should be around this area, right? Near the end of it. Because when I've explained the fact that, essentially, on the map itself, did all the shortcuts, has done all the tech, has not only that, just surfed the stages well. Just did everything on the map well. This is a map nobody has grinded, but now somebody comes along and does everything that the map basically had a checklist of things that hadn't been done yet, and then fills out that entire checklist. Is that not an insane record? So let's see where it actually is placed. It should probably be around here, because the map has been out for fucking years. Now let's see where it ranks on the list here. I can't see it. Here it is. So Lodi Preview got ranked 15. And this is the problem I have. Some records inherently will just be rated higher because they are more competitive, right? But that doesn't mean that the current record is good. I think that's the main takeaway. You can have a very competitive map, but just because it's competitive and well optimized, there is still a difference between if the rap record is good at the time for what we know it is versus like you get the point, right? Say it's a hard world record hard to get the Utopia? Probably, arguably, right? Depends on the player too, because some people are better at Utopia and some people are better at things like loading preview. That is a fair question you're posing though. But you also gotta take into account, remove the fact that how difficult the map is to grind, right? This is about if the map is competitive or not. So when somebody does come along and does get a good record on the run, does that mean that the record is not as valuable because it's just not competitive? You're ranking a map record lower because you don't know much about it. It's kind of ridiculous, right? You're literally saying that, so literally saying why Lodi Preview was placed low. Sure, it's a good rec because Lodi did all the skips. Not only that, he also just surfed the stages well. He also did all of the small techs perfectly. Did all the, but it's never played, so it's hard to know how good it actually is because it's not contested as much as other maps like Utopia and Cyberwave. Exactly. And the thing is, even a person that doesn't play this map can understand how good the record is if they just get the context. But people just like basically say, oh, I get the context, but I just like, why didn't anyone do it earlier? Because it's still hard. Just because, like, simply put, like, that's another layer of difficulty. If something is just fucking hard, why don't we praise it more? Praise Surf LT Omnific a lot. Because one, it's a long map, one of the most iconic maps. And essentially, it does all the same things, because it could literally fit the same criteria in that regard too. Because it has such a legacy, if it was just a random 5-minute long map and nobody fucking knew about it, people would have the same perspective as on Loading Preview as Omnific if that was the case. Who the fuck would play a 5-minute long map that has 18 stages? That's the point. Yet we praise Omnific because it has so much difficulty and was an incredible map at the time, and was an innovation, and was a basically like a monument if you were able to beat it, right? That's the context you gotta apply, right? So of course, when you have that, you're gonna praise the map more, but nobody gives a fuck about a map that's really weird or really boring. Omnific gets played a lot more than... Yeah, because guess what? The map is long. It basically has only 2 other criterias, and it's this one and this one. And these 2 are absolutely off the table. Omnific is such a hard map to run. It's 18 stages, 5 minutes. Usually, if you're gonna go for a bad no-fail, it's 6 minutes long of straight gameplay. Accessibility, you got 18 stages to learn. And you gotta learn how to do it for telehop, how to understand the strats, every single intricate small detail about how to optimally run every single stage. That's why people praise it, those why it's so hard. Exactly. So how come nobody talks about Surf Y? I think Louis has a bunch of these records that perfectly describe what I'm trying to get across. They're not very like it's not your typical surf. Yet when somebody tries to do it well, it doesn't get as praised often. Yet it basically almost has the same level of like difficulty as some of these other records, and potentially even more than some of them, because people don't understand that type of surf as much. Exactly, and that is what I mean about this whole discussion. Have you seen like how it's kind of gotten full circle? Also, Omnific is a lot more enjoyable to play than Loading Preview. Yeah, exactly. The map type of it is very, very good. It is simply just a map with simple surf, with well executed, fun mechanic, like, you know, the telehopping, smooth simple surf with great obstacle design. That is basically the point made. Now, and the thing is, map records that are just iconic will always have this treatment. Fuck, look at my record! For fuck's sake, look at my Tree Fort record! Like, hello? I'll tell you right now, if this was some random ass tier 5 map that was like 8 stages, nobody would give a shit. But it's Tree Fort, one of the most iconic collab maps from its time. Plus, it was also like one of the more it was probably one of the most difficult tier 5s to do. But here's what you gotta like think about Tree Fort, right? I did nothing new on Tree Fort. All of these things were known about. And I think that's why I wanted specifically to talk about this in comparison to Tree Fort. I did nothing new on Tree Fort. I did nothing new. There was nothing new I did in my Tree Fort run. All of these strats were known of before, and I just did them. But not only that, I surfed the map well. And what does this map record get? Number 3 of map records of the year. So what does fucking Loading Preview get? It gets fucking 15. Yet Tree Fort and Loading Preview are literally 2 maps with the exact same it basically does have the same two things. Like, I feel like that's basically what I wanted to talk about. It's just people don't know, and it's that simple. Point at the end of the day, fucking Loading Preview underrated record should have at least been top 3 of the year. Right, I understand why this one won. Here's a take that people don't like to hear. If you're going to rate something objectively, you need to just remove the fact that you got this in a tournament and just take the record for what it is. Remove all the factors. Basically say, I feel like record of the year probably could have been Lemex's run on Surf Raffaello. But here's the thing. Let's go look at this. How you need to rate this shit is not necessarily the fact that he did this in a tournament. It's impressive circumstances for how he did it, of course. But that doesn't mean that the record is fucking insane and the best record of the year and all that shit. It literally doesn't. It's probably the most memorable record of the year. 100%. Like, it is a very good record for like the circumstances, right? Am I right, guys? Am I right? Like, I'm not tripping here, right? This was done in a tournament, wasn't it? Remove the fact it was done in a tournament. You need to measure it by how beatable it is in save lock or how beatable the run is by itself. Remove the fact it was from a tournament. Say, Levi got this record on the map, and then just see, is the map record good? You need to treat this as any other record. I would know I don't run Volcanic and shit like that, but that's how you would need to rate it. Can you say this was record of the year? Maybe you could, but here's the thing. That doesn't excuse the fact that you still need to do what I just said. You absolutely need to disconnect the fact that it was done in a tournament. You need to do that. The surf community really fucking sucks at determining how good a map record is because we're simply just not knowledgeable enough on different maps. Specifically, something like Lodi Preview, which basically meets some of the circumstances I had, for example, with Treefort. There was nothing new I did on my Treefort world record, yet it gets third place. Because it fills more of these criterias. Fucking Louis did everything on Lodi Preview that had not been done before, and it gets number 15. Bazooki, did you... What was it? Did you have a fucking test for me? What was it? Because if that is the case, we move on. Hi, Max Payne. That was the yap. I don't have anything else besides the yap.